I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Shelley, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara,
President.
Councilman Iacilli,
Here.
Councilman Pell,
I'm here today.
and Councilman Schiavone.
Excused absence.
Yes. All right, we're going to start the meeting with a presentation on the Noyak Road pedestrian enhancement and traffic calming measures. Nick Jimenez from Capital Projects Manager is here, and Tom Houghton as well, our engineer. Why don't you come on up and join us? Tell us what this is all about.
Hello, Nick and Tom.
Oh. All right, I guess we could do that one. Yes.
Also,
Thank you.
We'll have it.
once you sign it, I guess of course you'll be notified through the contract through Tom to when it's going to happen.
I'm going to need you. Because who sent it to my office?
Tantiata and West Hampton. Yeah, Mark has West Hampton.
Doesn't
I have to go back.
You're going to switch it out.
Really? We're having a work
Thank
session
you.
on parking?
No. Why?
No, I thought we were just having a public hearing. I didn't hear
We
having a
are.
work
Who
session on
said
it.
we're having a work session?
I don't know why. We don't
Who
have-
said we're having a work session? We're
Send
not.
us an email that we're having a work session
No,
on the parking in East Well.
I think read it unless I have a typo in there.
So you're having Charlie and Tom come in for a work session. On
No,
parking.
well, that's a typo. I meant to have them attend the public hearing on the 13th, just in case we
Oh,
need
okay.
some background.
Okay.
And then just the work session, I don't think it would be much, but
I'd rather just wait on that
on the
and just get everybody's input.
elect to consider.
Yeah, because I've asked for outside input as well now, so I'd just rather get everybody's internal input and then.
I like that it's a policy and not a code. I think that's the best way to go.
Yeah,
And
I just.
I don't think people will object to what is being proposed.
No, but I want to get some outside input, so if we're not having a public hearing, then I've already reached out to several people to get some outside input on it too before we go through with it. So,
So, okay. Do you think you'll have it by the 1st?
probably not by the first, no.
Okay, we can reschedule that. And then the 8th is just for the social media.
So do I do the social media on the first instead?
We could, if Katie's available, can we jigger that? But let's get to the topic at hand.
You got it.
Why don't you start from the beginning?
So from the beginning, we go back to 2022. Councilman Schiavone approached Tom and I about initiating a capital project. He had received some requests to look at Noyak Road as far as pedestrian access and obviously traffic calming and traffic safety improvements, which ones could be done. Way back in 2013, the town investigated installing a bike lane along Noyak Road and pursued federal funds for that project. It was not received well, and they did not get we did not receive the funding we sought after, and that was abandoned. So Tommy John regrouped and wanted to look at sidewalks. So in 2022, we initiated the capital project and retained Greenman Peterson as our design consultant to install sidewalks.
So wait a minute, back in 2022, so the
In
board
2022.
must have approved a
Yes,
resolution
the board approved
to
the
go out to
resolution.
bid?
Correct, RFP. So we put out
Uh-huh.
an RFP to the world. We got a bunch of proposals back, and GPI was selected as our design
And
consultant.
then we did a resolution, the board did a resolution to
Correct.
hire this firm.
Yes. And back then, this project was envisioned as a 5-year capital project for the funding that we would have needed. We anticipated the cost would be around $5 million, and the board would fund around $1 million per year until we got to the actual budget that we needed, and then we could go forth and build it.
And did the firm that we hired
Mhm.
provide the drawings?
So I'll back up a minute. GPI provided in the timeline GPI provided us preliminary concept plans last August. And we started discussing what could be done, what should be done, where certain improvements were better suited to be made. And in November, which was shortly thereafter, we identified the TAP grant opportunity. So we applied for the TAP grant started in November. We made the application in December, and GPI was basically told just pump the brakes and hold off until we get a response from the state as to whether or not we got the funding. Because again, for a $5 million project, it was very advantageous that we could pursue such an aggressive level of federal funding.
And also the design level changes when you're applying for that federal funding. So there are other requirements associated with those plans that we didn't want to get too far down the road to then have to upgrade those plans or waste any money, to be honest. So
yeah, the state reviews every step of the way. So the state reviews the concept, then they review the final design, then they review your contract documents, then they review your contractor that you want to award to, and then they review your actual construction. So it slows the process down a little bit, but it also, in this case, affords us the opportunity for I don't want to get the number wrong, $2.9 million grant. So where we're at now is we received.
Was the grant specific as to what has to be done, or was it generally pedestrian features did we give the state the design to base the grant on?
We told them what we anticipated we were going to do, which included sidewalks, pedestrian enhancements, and traffic calming initiatives. We tried to include the roundabout. They did not agree to include the roundabout because the state, because the TAP grant is specific to pedestrian type improvements, and even though there are pedestrian improvements in the roundabout, they felt the roundabout itself was more of a vehicular improvement as opposed to a pedestrian improvement.
Couldn't it be considered a traffic calming initiative?
It is a traffic calming initiative, but
But nonetheless, they didn't.
they didn't want to include that in the grant.
Traffic
Yeah, kind of. So where we're at now, I'm working with the state to get them the paperwork they need so that we can have an executed grant agreement. We've requested grant funding in the 2025, well, not grant funding, but we've requested capital funding to cover the cost of that grant in the 2025 budget. We met with the county yesterday, believe it or not, Tommy John, Councilman Welker, and Charlie Barton, a couple of his personnel at DPW to discuss the roundabout. So they are receptive to working with us to do something with
Where
that
would the
intersection.
where it was you're talking about near Long Beach
Long
Road?
Beach, correct. That's a big, so the community, back up again, in April, Tommy John and I visited the Newark Civic Council and presented the plans to the Civic Council, which was fairly positive. After we met with them, they held their own online survey, and their results showed 74% of the respondents were in favor of sidewalks from Trout Pond to Long Beach, and 69, if it matters, you're around 70 and 70. 69 were in favor of sidewalks from Long Beach to Serene Green.
Those are good numbers. What was the sample size? Do you know?
It's on their website, but I did not jot that down. I could get that information for you.
If you don't mind, yeah.
Sure.
Just so we know that enough members of the community had input in that.
of course,
Questions too. That can help with this.
Sure. But a big part of the community's request is, of course, to do something with Long Beach Road as well.
Yeah.
So that's why that's kind of a hinge point, as we can make pedestrian improvements there, but they also want the traffic flow to be improved. The county seemed to be interested in investigating a traffic signal, and the traffic signals can be for Long Beach and Noyak.
Yeah,
Wow.
like a light.
Like a light, yeah. Traffic signals can be controversial.
Yeah.
slow.
Instead of the
traffic circle. So there's limitations there. Bill Hillman made a case, and I can't disagree with him. There's limitations as far as how you have to design a traffic circle and the geometry of that intersection. Now, it's not an insurmountable issue, but it could be difficult to gain approval, if you will, from the county to put a traffic circle in if it doesn't meet all of
Circle
their
or signal?
traffic,
Circle.
a roundabout, I'm sorry, did I say traffic circle?
That's okay.
a roundabout if it doesn't meet all of their design parameters.
Hmm.
They hold jurisdiction over Long Beach still.
Only half though, right? Isn't it like a?
We went back and forth. Nobody really knows whose jurisdiction starts and ends.
It was a county-town partnership, and or the county has the section at the end toward the eastern side and
Yeah,
closer
I
to the
can't speak
village.
to
I
that.
thought that's what I thought it was, but
Yeah, they didn't. They seemed to intimate that they had Long Beach up until the circle, and then we had Noyak, and then whose jurisdiction starts and ends somewhere in the rotary. We would have to research.
Because the highway superintendent showed me a plan with you. If we just took the traffic circle and moved and made it a little bit wider so you could have 2 lanes, one making a right, one making a left. 'Cause when you
Yeah,
pull up
just
to it now, when you go up to it now,
Yes, so
I use that word
that's
all
that's
the
an
time.
option, but
Yeah.
that's something that really needs to be engineered properly.
Yeah, that was it was just a sketch to make an idea to have it. You know,
A big
come up to have an engineer.
or a major point of traffic calming and a roundabout is to slow the traffic down while keeping it moving.
Yeah.
So when you introduce 2-lane traffic circles, if that second lane becomes a bypass,
Yeah.
your speeds don't decrease as much as you might like, and then you get an uneven flow through the roundabout.
Yeah.
So cars entering through that bypass lane will intimidate cars either in the circle or that want to enter the circle. And I mean, the Riverhead Circle is a perfect example of that, where when there's a very heavy volume coming off of one leg as opposed to
It's
another leg,
dangerous.
it just dominates, and it's very hard to get in.
so I'm assuming, based on studies, that the backup for what's causing the backup on Noyak is Long Beach Road. Is the traffic that's trying to get onto Long Beach Road? Is that
That's one. There's backups along the road as it. I mean, I
because
know.
you got a lot of side roads that contractors are going to various jobs and people are heading home or going somewhere.
But if I could back up, because I know we're focusing on this roundabout a little too much. I think,
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
It's not part of it.
Yeah, it's not part of it
Yes.
yet. Exactly. It's something we hope to include, but the project will be to provide pedestrian enhancements and traffic calming in front of Capoletti's, Cromer's Market, and Jimmy Jim's Deli.
Have you engaged with any of the businesses?
Tommy John has been in contact with the businesses.
Okay.
They're receptive as well. I know Capoletti's is a little strange where they're backing out into the lane like they are at Cromer's. We'd like to address that with more parallel parking, pedestrian bulb outs, possibly raised crosswalks, speed tables, but just a high visibility crosswalk. Wherever we do have pedestrian crossings, we're going to put the beacons. We're proposing driver feedback devices, signs that flash your speed along the road to hopefully calm it down a little bit.
Do you hear that? Is everything okay out there?
Sure it is.
Okay.
Mike, you better get out there. You're missing a story.
Is that people out on the street?
Sounds like it's
Yeah.
I heard.
Yes, not yet.
There's news happening? Are you for real? Yeah.
He wants his building to be okay.
Oh. We just want to make sure it's
Yeah,
Right.
there's something going on here.
so it's very aggressive.
What's happening?
I don't know. Two guys up there.
Two guys yelling.
Oh, he's really loud.
I think we should maybe, a guy up right below us with a bag, and he's
A bag?
very
Yeah.
agitated.
Should we pause?
Apology.
I think we should pause
Let's pause.
to find
All
out
right,
what's
so
going on.
we'll-
Yeah, good.
Let's take
10 minutes.
a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Aye.
Favor?
There's some possible violence outside.
So I move to, and go back into the work session.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Please proceed.
So in our brief break there, I got answers to Councilman Asali's question. There were 144 respondents to the survey. It went out to the community at large.
Okay.
And the questions were very basic to the extent of, do you support sidewalks from Trout Pond to Long Beach? And do you support sidewalks from Long Beach to Serene Green?
Okay.
With that being said, as I was discussing before, pedestrian crossings at Capoletti's, Jimmy Jim's Deli, and Cromer's Market. Also, intersection realignment at Serene Green to remove the, I guess, westbound to northbound bypass lane, if you will, and make it a normalized intersection, just a regular T intersection. Noyak Road will still flow. There will be no stop, but Stony Hill will have a stop sign, and it'll be a more formal left and right from Stony Hill. It'll improve sight lines. There's been a couple of accidents there. That's the,
I'm just arrested for disturbing the peace.
that is
I don't know why we can't
the,
lock.
that is the background of the project.
Why don't we do it?
Thanks, got this.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom.
I did, when I found out you were doing this, I just checked with Charlie just to make sure this wouldn't have any impact on his paving schedule, because I know he's planning to pave part of Noyak, and he said it would not.
We do not, we're not proposing any paving within the limits per se. Obviously, Serene Green or Stony Hill and Noyak will get some paving, and if we do go forward with any type of intersection improvements at Long Beach,
Or speed tables or.
speed tables, but not like a resurfacing along the entire length.
Yeah,
Well,
but, you know, it would be disruptive if we just paved and then you're putting sidewalks in, so, but he said it's not that portion of the road
You
No,
anyway.
it's a different portion.
Could be advantageous to the extent that we may be able, if he did say pave, because it is a ways off, construction is anticipated to start in 2026. If he did pave, we could possibly face form the curb. So instead of actually, I'm getting into the nitty gritty of construction here, but you usually take about a foot to 2 feet of pavement out to get your formwork in for your concrete curb. If the road asphalt is in really good shape, you can saw cut along the face of curb and actually form it right up against the asphalt. So even if you did want to pave, I wouldn't say, no,
So-
you can't pave, it'd be horrible if you paved.
We
could work
definitely
around it.
so we definitely need to make sure that the repaving project, because I know that there are two phases that the highway superintendent and the deputy superintendent have proposed for next year's budget. We want to make sure, at the very least, you are working in coordination with them so that there is not an overlap that could possibly hinder one or the other.
Okay.
So
So they're, I think they stop right before Trout Pond, right?
yeah, I think so.
And then if they wanted to pave, say in 2026, the rest of the way, we could
You'd be
coordinate. Well, they'd both be on at the same time, but we could of course coordinate it.
I think the repaving has to occur as soon as possible, because the road is in really serious disrepair.
Yeah, like I said, that would not pose a problem to what we're trying to do with curbs and sidewalks.
Okay.
On one side or the other.
Okay.
It might even be cost effective, to be honest with you, because you wouldn't need the excavation, you wouldn't need the pavement repair if we could actually face form curbs. So,
I know I missed part of it, but is there sidewalks on both sides?
no.
There's
The
no-
sidewalk will alternate. It starts on the south side of Trout Pond, and just before Cromer's, it switches over to the north side, goes to the north side the rest of the way, and after Long Beach switches back to the south side. And then it
Oh,
stays
good.
on the south side from Long Beach to Serene Green, and then as you make the left to go up to Sag Harbor, it'll be on what's now the east side.
'Cause it's
so
pretty
the left, the right.
Yeah, it's pretty steep on the south side in some areas.
Yeah, there's one area where GPI identified the probable requirement of a retaining wall right after Cromer's, just before Long Beach. And it's early in the planning stage, we have the opportunity to change that. So if we say, hey, we don't want to build this retaining wall here, we'd rather not mess with that area, we could keep it to the south side as opposed to the north side of the road.
And telephone poles.
Telephone poles are on the south side. That's another issue that GPI has identified. Most of them are PSEG owned, so as a public improvement, there won't be a cost to the town. The LIPA owned, or not LIPA, excuse me, the Verizon owned poles, there would be a cost to the town to remove or relocate them. We try to work around them as much as we can. If we can jog the sidewalk to the left or the right, we'll try to jog the sidewalk. And if it is advantageous to be on the north side of the road as opposed to the south side of the road to avoid telephone poles, we can do that as well.
So just out of curiosity, why is the Verizon poles we have to pay for and the PSC poles we don't?
Because they are a telecom company, they're not a public utility. So PSEG is a public utility, we're a municipality. When we are doing a public improvement, the public utility has to make whatever revisions, improvements, relocations that need be made for the public improvement on their own, at their own expense. Telecoms, for whatever reason, are exempted from that requirement.
And another issue too, when we do this, is that for the fire districts to move in the fire hydrants on both sides of the roads.
Excuse me?
You
Fire
reached out-
hydrants?
Yeah, you reach out to the fire district to see if they need another hydrant on the other side, since it's gonna be all torn up.
It's not gonna be that level of torn up.
Yeah.
We're gonna tear up the shoulders on the side that we're working on, but other than that, we're not gonna excavate the road bed
Yeah, but
or,
they might want to shoot something underneath while you're doing that to put a safety.
Potentially tremendous cost.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it is, 35,000 golf course.
But that would be up to the water
District, yeah.
Yeah.
So sure, I'll make a note of that, and then as we get farther down, we'll,
That's what it was a few years ago.
from here on out, once we execute the grant documents and we
Yeah.
actually are approved to move forward with preliminary design, we're going to be holding at least two, probably 3 public outreach meetings.
Okay.
With the Civic.
Well, with the civic and the community at large.
Good.
Possibly something at Town Hall, definitely something in Noyak.
Well,
but,
what's the schedule for the plans? I mean, so right now, we only have the preliminary concept plans, correct? So
Correct.
but we've already
So-
entered into a contract for the full design, bid specs.
Yes. So that is contingent on the state basically approving preliminary design. So if the state approves preliminary design by, we'll say, the spring of 2025, then we will have final plans by the fall of 2025.
Did we submit them yet?
No, we don't have a grant
Will we
agreement.
submit them with the contract when we get the contract?
After the contract.
Yes, after the contract.
We don't have it yet, the contract.
No, that'll be coming to you probably next month as a TBR to authorize execution of the grant contract.
Very good.
Yeah, it's a little hokey. They send us the notice of award, and then we still have to make another application for federal funding. So that part has been done. They review that application, and then when that is approved, they can execute a grant agreement with the town.
Then we send them the preliminary design. If they're okay with that, then we proceed with the more full design.
Yes, correct.
And in the meantime, are we gonna have the public meetings?
Once we start preliminary design, that's when I anticipate the public meetings, just because that's the phase of the project where you're making the changes and fleshing out what will become the final design. Preliminary design is going to show you your conflicts. It's going to show you where you want the improvements to be made, and then hopefully you gain a consensus with the community. The state reviews and approves it, and allows you to go to final design, which is then going to do the engineering. So.
Do we have the preliminary design on the thumb drive to put up on the screens for us to see?
It's on the town's website. It's under community projects, all of the preliminary concepts and the preliminary designs. So I'm not familiar with the thumb drive, but it is.
Or, I mean, it's on the website, so,
Yes.
but you weren't expecting to talk us through the design today?
No, I don't want to get too far down the road with specifics. That concept design was developed before we pursued the TAP grant. It was developed
Good change.
before we went out to the community. The community obviously had some input or some comments about traffic calming. So our designs are heavy on pedestrian improvements, less heavy on traffic calming. So I don't want to.
They will change.
Yeah,
Who's
it'll-
gonna
it'll
change them?
Freeman Peterson.
Based on what, though?
So once we have the execute a contract with the state, then we'll start to incorporate those designs, but it doesn't really make sense to move forward until that contract is fully executed. So that we can know that we have funding.
But they already told us we're getting the award,
Yeah.
right? So,
Right,
I
but until
mean,
we
we could
have-
take steps in anticipation to save time, don't you think?
We can move forward if you'd like to, but
Just so that when we get the contract, we're ready to go.
we're talking about a month. I mean, we're looking at fall completion of design, April construction start. So it's not gonna save us any construction time on the 2026 end, based on the amount of float that we have in the project. But yeah, we can move forward.
I mean, wait a minute, so we have to have a public meeting or two to get input on the current design, or we're gonna redesign and then get the public input?
We're gonna incorporate what we've previously gathered from them and then go back out to the public. But based on the 2026 construction start, we're looking to have the documents done in fall of 2025. So if we get started 1 month early, so let's say we were planning on being done October 2025, now we'll be done September 2025. So we still have to wait till April. Still have to wait another 6 months to start construction after the winter's over. So we can either get started now and then cross our fingers that we're going to get the contract and everything's going to be good, or we can wait another month till the contract's
Okay,
issued.
I mean, if you're more comfortable waiting, but I don't know why they wouldn't send us the contract if they gave us the award letter. But I defer to you.
We're talking about $3 million, so.
I would wait for the contract.
Well, okay, they wouldn't say they're gonna give it to us. What about,
Stranger things have happened with government.
How much do you think it's, since the $5 million was like, you estimated that a few years ago, what do you think it's up to now?
So the current estimate, less the roundabout, is 4.7 million. The roundabout in and of itself is estimated to cost around 1.7 million. So that is why we are
Not
reaching
doing
out
the
to reaching out to the county to try and have them
Okay.
well, yeah.
whatever they can do, basically, yes.
So then did you put in your budget request for this year, the 1.7
No.
difference on the project?
No, we have not.
Part of it?
Well, we're a little bit over where we would, we're a little bit over the 4.7, but we're not fully there to the roundabout. I didn't want to request something that might.
No, not for the roundabout, but it's a 1.7 difference between the grant amount and the total project cost?
I have that number.
I know you said it was 4.7 for the entire project.
Yeah, so
Without
we
the
have
roundabout.
820,000 available now. That leaves a $3,880,000 shortfall. The TAP grant covers another 2.358 million. So the required bonding over the grant and the existing funding is 1.521 million.
Grant is 2.3, I thought it was 2.9.
No, the grant is 80%, so they're awarding us 2.943 million, of which they will fund 80%. If that makes
Well,
sorry if that
they'll-
wasn't
So
clear.
they'll go
They'll
up
give
to
us-
2.9.
Yeah, they'll go up to 2.9, we just have to come up with the balance of the, match
No,
20%.
No, but they only do
They're
80% of the full project.
They're funding a $2.9 million project.
And the project's gonna cost 4.7,
Correct. Yes.
so don't we have to save up
Yeah.
1.7?
20%
No,
of the
because
2.9 plus the difference.
we have 820 already in
Put
the
in
bank.
your budget.
Correct. So it's a $1.5 million shortfall.
Okay.
Was that 800,000 earmarked for this? Or
Yes.
It was
That was
earmarked,
Noyak Road Pedestrian Enhancements Project.
and that does not include the blacktop and repairing.
No, we received 1 million back in 2022 when we hired GPI. GPI's cost so far, well, their total contract was 180,000. So the 1 million less the 180 brings us to the 820.
But the blacktop, to replace the blacktop, is not in this.
No,
No, that would be in the highway budget.
which we're
Well,
working.
we know.
Yeah.
All right, so you'll let us
I would
know
just
when
wonder,
the
'cause since they're
contract
tearing the
comes
road
in,
up, it should have been,
Yeah,
and there's nothing we can do in
so
the
they should give
meantime.
us credit for tearing the road up.
not that I would recommend.
Mhm.
simply because anything we do, the state will need to review, and I'd like to get a temperature on what they'd like to see or not like
Community.
to see. The community and the state, really.
So you don't waste time
Exactly.
and give people false hope
Sure.
or upset people.
But this is great news.
So I want to say,
Good.
Which, there was, some people in the community were asking about the number of traffic accidents. And apparently there's a distinction between what was reported and what our records are reflecting and what they think actually occurred. What do you think is the reason for that?
Number of motor vehicle accidents just go unreported.
Some people just don't report them to the police, so then they're not in our records.
Correct.
I looked, actually, I think I sent your office the data. Most of the accidents are centered around Cromer's Market, backing out, and the vast majority are fixed object, off the road into trees and telephone poles, deer. There were a couple bicycle and a couple pedestrian, but I mean 2 or 3 if I recall. And
the road is very narrow.
yeah, it wasn't. There could have been, if I'm using just stupid numbers, there could have been 100 accidents, and maybe out of those 100 accidents, 10 of them were actual vehicle to vehicle with injuries. The rest were all off road, maybe backing with minor property damage or deer incidents.
In your memo, it says there are approximately 12 to 15 community or business sites with curb cuts located along
Yep.
Noyak Road. Noyak Road has averaged approximately 50 motor vehicle accidents per year over the
Correct.
past 3 years.
So that'd
So
be 150 over the last 3 years.
150 accidents over the last 3 years.
But just because somebody has a video of an accident, if it wasn't reported to the police, it's not like that can get added to our data.
Correct. We're unable to review the circumstances to even determine if it's applicable to the road. Could be DWI. could
Well,
be-
also the daily volume on that road is 13,000 vehicles, so.
And is it our data, or is that data sort of
Comes from
funneled
state.
through?
Comes from New York State. It's reported from any jurisdiction that has authority over that road. If a report was made, the data is on the state's website. There's about a 10-month lag as to what's reported. So I cannot go on today and find accidents from yesterday,
Right.
but I can go on today and find accidents from last year. So we look at a 3-year window when we're reviewing accidents, and we look at the latest 3-year window.
So it's not our town data. It's not town data.
No, it does incorporate town data because our town data is reported.
Okay.
So the majority of the reports are from town police,
Mhm.
but we go to the state website in order to gather any report that's being created. So, but if an accident goes unreported, we're pretty much unable to utilize it as accident data for purposes of traffic engineering.
And just along the subject of data, do we have speed information? Is there average speed? I know that we have monitors that we've set up throughout Noyak Road. Have we been able to sort of gather?
I don't know
Off the top of my head, I don't have any data for
I
you,
know
but
that
we can
the-
go back to GPI and check
Okay.
what their study performed.
Or it might be the police that gather the data from the speed
Yeah.
cameras,
they
the
do.
speed monitors.
Do they, you have to go to the camera and get it off the camera, or is that Wi-Fi?
Depends what kind of camera. So there
Monitor.
are certain
Monitor.
cameras that are Bluetooth, some are Wi-Fi, some are on the
The
cloud.
ones,
We're
the
talking,
ones,
no,
um,
cameras. We're talking about the digital speed signs.
Yeah.
Monitors.
Yeah.
those the ones we just, the 5 you just got us, the 5 more you
Yeah,
want.
I'm not sure where Highway put them or how Highway's accessing them, but yeah, we gave them to them and
Yeah, but
they ran with
those,
them.
yeah, but I know that. But thank you for doing that. It's been great, helpful. But is that, do you know if they are Wi-Fi accessible, those?
You'd have to ask the Highway Department.
But you might know.
I was pretty sure they have a cloud software on those specific units, but whether Highway's logged in or what, I cannot
Okay.
speak to.
Can you
I'll
vote for
find
it?
out.
Mm.
Budget?
And those cameras were new models, right?
Yep, brand new.
I know they told me
It
that
wouldn't
one,
be too difficult for us to do
Yeah.
a spot
Yeah.
speed study. We would need a couple of radar guns,
Yeah.
a couple hours.
We already have cameras.
We have radar
guns.
You have plenty
They're
of speed
set up.
signs. So it would be helpful.
Someone has to pull the data.
It would be helpful if that could be pulled and we could get an update on that.
And someone also asked about trucks using, if there's a way to get the trucks that use Noyak Road as a bypass to go up to,
Sag Harbor.
a different way.
To
And
stop them
I
from
think
using
Tom
it, or to get them
Neely
to
said a lot of the trucks are using it as a bypass. I
Yeah,
don't know if there's any
it's-
signage
It is an
there.
arterial road in
Yeah.
town, so that would be a pretty big move to ban trucks from Noack
Can't,
Road
there's
and
no
then
way.
local access only, and then we're back to trucks using Noack Road.
Is there any weight limit
No,
that you're aware of?
I do not envision weight limits on Noack Road.
It's too much of a major
Yeah,
access.
in an engineering study, it's gotta be verified. If anything, maybe there's a weight limit on the bridge or near Trout Pond, but, that would be the highway department.
That's an interesting comment.
So just could you repeat again, did we send the preliminary concept plans to the state yet or not?
Yes,
In-
the
in
state,
the
the
application?
state received the preliminary plans in the application.
Okay.
But
And
very preliminary, like sidewalks on one side of the road.
Mhm.
So concept design will be, and community outreach will be, where is it best to put crosswalks? What side of the road is it best to have the actual sidewalks? What do they prefer? They might prefer them on the north side or the south side, and there might be some conflict that we, as the municipality and the owner, decide, thank you, but we're gonna put it on the north side to avoid this conflict, so on and so forth. But, yeah, we've identified the business corridors as needing parking and crosswalks. But the community might come out and say, hey, there's a bus stop on this corner and a lot of kids are crossing the bus stops on this side of the road when it goes to school. We'd really appreciate a crosswalk at this roadway.
That's a good idea.
That's the information, that's the data we don't
Yeah.
have at this point. We went to the civic council, but that wasn't the community at large per se. That was
This
those
act,
people that
if
attend
you
the
had-
civic council
You
meetings.
get sidewalks on certain streets where the bus stops at, instead of the bus stop in front of each house, they can
Don't
stop
let
at the
that
corner like they used to do.
Sure.
So what we're gonna show the community is the current preliminary concept draft without any updates, and then we'll get input and then we'll revise it, is what
That's
you're
my,
saying.
yeah, that's my hope. That's what we did with the civics,
Yeah,
at the civic
all
council.
right, and there'll be
That's
crosswalks and sidewalks and pedestrian, well, what do you call it, multi-use paths? It's
No,
all,
No
Sidewalks.
multi-use path, just the sidewalks.
Sidewalks and shoulders.
You're actually making the road wider.
No, the
No.
road stays the same width. It'll be a sidewalk to the
You're
south
not
of the
taking
north
any
side.
of the sidewalk out of the road,
Shoulder.
out of the grass,
Out of the grass, correct.
and the bushes.
okay,
There's not quite enough room to have a true multi-use path, just because it's a shoulder on asphalt separated with a white line by a lane, that doesn't make it a multi-use
Yeah.
path.
I mean, I knew there was gonna be sidewalks, but not the whole length, and that when there's not a sidewalk, I thought we were doing something else, but I'll wait
So no,
and
we're
see the
doing
design.
sidewalks the whole lane.
Yeah,
One of the first things that we investigated with GPI was a shared use path. GPI designed the Wisconsin Highway shared use path that goes from Smithtown to Brookhaven, I guess. And to accommodate the shared use path would have required shifting the entirety of the roadway either to one side or the other, just based on the amount of width you would have needed,
The-
without extreme property acquisitions.
the definition of shared use path is a 10-foot wide path that facilitates two-way traffic, or two 5-foot wide paths on either side of the road that are very clearly separated from traffic. By either a median or a grass shoulder, but not immediately adjacent to cars. The narrow, even though the right of way is large on Noack Road, the narrow roadway corridor does not support that size of infrastructure improvement. Especially with the numerous driveways and businesses, and it's the sidewalk is, we're lucky we can get 5-foot continuous sidewalk across this whole length of corridor, which is fantastic. The last thing we want to do is a sidewalk end, and then you got to walk on the road and then walk back on the sidewalk. So it's going to be a great project.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, thank you both.
You-
We'll look
Thank you,
forward
Nick.
to the next
Thanks,
steps.
Thanks for the fan, so I hope it works.
I feel
Oh, I didn't even notice that. No wonder it was cool. Thank you.
Good to see when it's 50 people in here.
Next on our agenda is a presentation on a zone change request for a multi-senior housing in Eastport, proposed by the Central Suffolk Hospital doing business as Peconic Bay Medical Center. We have Janice Shear with us, our Town Planning and Development Administrator. Also, Andrew Mitchell from Northwell
Hi, Janice.
Health, David Wortman, BHB, and John Bennett, counsel to the,
And Dave Wilcox is joining
and Dave
us.
Wilcox.
I think we need a couple more chairs. No, please, have a seat.
Hey, John, you can sit next to me, right?
I'm gonna ask
Yeah.
John Ortiz, you said that contract is in my office? Jackie can't sign it.
Mr. Mitchell, how are you?
All right.
I'm supposed to say that.
Are you good there? You wanna come over to the
Is it the demolition of the Bel Air or
Demolition.
the, that's what's in?
West Hampton.
But that's not in there yet,
No,
right?
that's in, then it goes back up. Just sends it to the contractor. Sends it back.
Maybe I just thought before Janice starts to talk, I would do just a full set of introductions.
Thank
Just
you.
a moment, please.
Mr. Mitchell.
Just a moment.
So sorry.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
I want to give you my full attention.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Time to multitask. All right.
It's nice that
Now
you
we're
say,
done.
it's nice that you say that, because usually when someone's doing that, they're refusing to give me the full attention.
Also with a phone, right?
Unless they need money, of course.
I look up and the whole landscape changed in the room.
I'm John Bennett, and Andy Mitchell from Northwell's
Good morning.
with us. And I don't want, I just want to introduce, I don't want to.
Mr. Bennett, may I may I request that the easel just be placed more toward the podium over there? That way our camera can.
If you put it over on this side of the podium, then the camera can get
Yeah,
it.
that way the public can see, and we appreciate the easel. That's a great touch.
It's Dave Wortman.
Hey, Dave.
How are you?
Juan Casino, Andy Inizio behind us she's from Northwell, and everyone knows Kim Judd. We're counsel together. But I just wanted to have a full introduction. Sorry to step on you. Sorry about that.
Do the other people want to come up? We get more chairs.
I think
We
this
can rotate
is,
it.
yeah,
Thanks,
this is
Bill.
fine.
Good morning, everyone.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
John has to move over there. Yeah, in front of the picture.
So, good morning.
Good morning.
As you know, Town Planning and Development Administrator, the way this procedure works is that when we have someone who wants to request a zone change, they come in for a work session with the board and have their opportunity to present it to you. And then I issue you a report, and then you decide whether or not you want to consider it. So in advance, I did some of the report because I thought you would like to have some context. I just added some maps and some
Thank you.
recommendations from the comp plan. But after this meeting, I'll populate it with more information, and then you'll have that because the code requires it. So with that, leave it to Andy and Mr. Mitchell and Mr. Bennett and their team to make their presentation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
No.
Oh, okay, fine. But just some very, very brief comments. Northwell is a not-for-profit entity, as everyone knows, and what we're trying to do here is sort of a novel framework for senior citizen workforce housing capable of providing health care, telehealth for this over 55 community, and some much-needed workforce housing. It's sort of a one-of-a-kind project, and we're hoping that you'll embrace it with us. The combined acreage of the two tax lots involved is 43 acres, which is substantial. And this is a critical part, particularly because we're in the compatible growth area of the Pine Barrens. We're not seeking to disturb any of the undisturbed portion of the property. So the rest of it will all be left undisturbed, other than what's disturbed there now. So again, it's a combination of workforce and senior citizen housing. You'll see, I'm gonna have some comments after everyone presents, but you'll see this is an area of limited development with public property to the west. There was a piece that was taken directly to the west, was taken by the state in '69 for eminent domain purposes. And then to the west of that is the Long Island Wine Dance Club, most of which has been converted to Pine Barrens credits. So to the west, you have an open space piece that was taken by the state in 1969 by eminent domain. My guess is for part of the extension, but it never got extended. But that's uncleared.
That's for Route 111. What is County Route 111?
Yes, yes, exactly.
That's interesting.
So that's preserved land by the state or just
No,
owned by
my
the
guess is
state?
they took it for for the extension of the right of way, which of course never happened, but it's much broader than would be needed. My guess they would probably, if an
Still in
extension
state,
went
still in
forward.
state ownership?
Excuse me?
It's still
in state ownership, yeah.
And to the best of our knowledge, it's not preserved. It just seems that the road kind of stopped.
State has created bicycle paths in certain other areas of the, like over in, I know in Stony Brook, Setauket, they did have bypass that they put a bicycle path.
We're
instead
not
of
aware, it looks just from the aerial.
No, I'm
looks
saying
like
they haven't done anything now, but that's what they've done in the past. With some of the,
And then to the west of that.
Mr. Bennett, if I could.
John.
Good morning, everyone. I was late. Medical
Welcome
thing,
back. Are you
family.
okay?
I enjoyed watching the NOIAC presentation. Sorry that I missed it.
I'm
Any
sorry you
questions?
missed
We can talk later, but it is preliminary. Previous applicant or previous presentation. It is very preliminary, and more to come on that. Thank you.
Thank you, but in any event, and then I do want to just leave you with this photograph, which is very helpful.
You have another one?
Oh, gosh.
I'll
I
look.
was hoping I'm sorry, Tommy John. I apologize. But because I want Andy is going to tell you about the heart of this and what's the driving aspect of this. But what you're seeing here is the project site, which has been has the arrow on it, and to the west of that is the state property, which was condemned, taken by eminent domain in 1969, and then to the west of that is something. The north part of it is in Brookhaven. The south part of it is in the town of Southampton. That's the Long Island Club, which has been there since 1903. And I will represent to you that the bulk of it has been converted into Pine Barrens credits, and the club is currently negotiating to convert probably the lion's share of what's left into Pine Barrens credits. Some of it's in Brookhaven, some of it's in the town of Southampton. So that this is an area that has an enormous amount of open space, which we think is extremely helpful because we're going to land this in an area that is not going to, impact an area that could be subject to a lot of further development. So, in any event, I'll be quiet and let you talk, Andy.
Thank you.
Sometimes not so easy for me.
Nor is it for me. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for allowing us to present to you today. I'm Andy Mitchell. My background is I've been in healthcare my entire career. I have the unusual degree of a Master's of Public Health, not an MBA. So while I can talk finances, it's really my focus has always been in my career about public benefit, public health, and programs to serve needed populations. Parenthetically, and this will come up as we talk about the preservation of a good portion of the site. I don't think anyone here is old enough to remember my late father, Sid Mitchell, Judge Mitchell. He and John Klein were the inventors of the farmland preservation program in Suffolk County. I was going to school in Union and Schenectady and used to get visits from my father as he had to go up to the Court of Appeals many times to defend that, and ultimately it's one of our very special things here in Suffolk County and especially the East End. So you'll hear that there's an important preservation piece of this because it's kind of in my genes. This is a healthcare project. It has a housing piece to it, but it is a healthcare project. And if you allow me to explain that for a moment, and then I'll get to the history of the property. We see a very large population of seniors who have lost access to healthcare and in many cases cannot afford to live where they grew up anymore. So a very significant portion of this project is a means to provide what we think are pilot and unique services to the senior population that will reside here. It also includes an element of affordable housing. Very important to Conic Bay Medical Center and our colleagues at Southampton Hospital, because as you all know, it's getting much more difficult to recruit service workers, even nurses, and quite frankly, our physicians who are part of our residency, graduate Medicaid, and medical education programs. So there will be an affordable piece to this, and that piece will also be open to the community, not just restricted to the hospital staff. By combining this multi-generational healthcare project, residential project, and by having our nurses, our physician residents, and other technical workers living in the community, we hope to create something that is a pilot that's, we believe, very unique in New York State. There are other parts of the country where this has happened. We know of none in New York State, where we can have a medical model for this community. Our doctors in training can provide physician health school services just within their own community. Our nurses can set up the appropriate clinics, and our home care program can be on site to provide the services that, as the seniors age and require more services, will be there to provide it. We also plan on leveraging our programs that we've already built in this area, albeit the major one being in Brookhaven Township, but it's up, as you may know, on the intersection of 111 and just about the expressway. That is the Gertrude and Lewis File campus that has primary care, that has specialty care, it has imaging, and it also has a large CVS. We propose in this project, through a lot of dialogue with Janice and the team, to operate a shuttle bus service free of charge to the residents, so as they need things from groceries to healthcare services that cannot be provided on site. We're not going to put a CAT scanner here and things like that. They'll have access to all of that. Northwell is very well.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. So are you saying this is residences, or are you going to have like some medical offices there as well?
Both. It's going to be largely residences. However, the clubhouse that you traditionally find in this community will also have space for medical services to be provided. Exam rooms.
Someone has a hard time, there'll be like a doctor on staff or
Yep.
a nurse.
But the shuttle bus would take people from here to the facility right on 111.
Yep.
And obviously to the hospital if they
the
need
hospital or whatever.
more services.
Like a progressive home.
Correct. Correct.
We were talking about one today with my father.
So the other piece of this is the technology component. Northwell is at the forefront of telemedicine and beginning an extensive foray into residential healthcare services. We are working with Samsung to put large televisions in the room that have teleconferencing capabilities and Bluetooth connections for blood pressure cuffs, blood sugar, weight, things like that. So each of the apartments for the seniors will have that technology built into their units for easy access to our telemedicine physicians and nurses. And as we mentioned, the file campus in Manorville has more extensive services when they can't be provided at home. This site has a long history. It was originally going to be the Hamptons Hospital, Inc. That's back in the early 1970s when a group of philanthropists from West Hampton felt they wanted to build their own hospital, build that hospital and connect it to Long Island Jewish Medical Center. They went through all of the processes with the town to receive the variance, all of the processes with the state of New York to get the CON, and surprisingly, astonishingly to me, the project failed on financing. The predecessor of the Dormitory Authority, which was the Medical Care Financing Administration, denied the project. after the property was acquired and everything was put in place. It was a long story in the New York Times about it, basically not being able to go forward when everything was in place. When that happened, shortly thereafter, Central Suffolk Hospital, Peconic Bay Medical Center, became the receiver of those assets and the property. So in the mid-1970s, we began to look at what we could do with the property. In the mid-1980s, the plan was to build an ambulatory surgery center. All the zoning variances and approvals were in place, and then the Peconic Health Corporation came into being. And as part of that dialogue, it was felt that we didn't need to have an ambulatory surgery center, we only have Peconic and Southampton covering that area. So that was shelved. In roughly around 2010, Peconic went through what Southampton is currently going through, and that is the consideration for a complete replacement hospital, going back to the first idea, and build a new hospital on the campus, and then ultimately convert the Riverhead campus to something else. That became moot because the diocese eventually sold the Mercy Hospital property, 22 acres, which is geographically contiguous with Peconic Bay Medical Center, so there now was room for expansion for the hospital in Riverhead without having to consider a replacement facility. This has been my project for the 21 years I've been at Peconic Bay Medical Center. I retired 18 months ago, and now I'm a full-time consultant to Northwell working on this special project. In discussions with the community, in discussions with Rabbi Schneier, in discussions with the people that live in Eastport to some extent, we have determined that today's real need is for affordable housing and senior housing. And we believe by making this a healthcare project that combines residential services and healthcare services together, partnering with the town and the community, we can make something very special here. There is no other such community with those kinds of medical services in the state. And we would like to make this a pilot project and ultimately be able to introduce it around the state to other healthcare systems. Just one last piece on the site before I turn it over to my colleagues from VHB. Preservation is an important piece of this project. My father would kill me from the grave if it didn't. A very significant portion that is undisturbed will remain undisturbed, and we are more than willing to discuss deeding that property over to the town, or if you feel appropriate, the county, so that that property is sterilized. We are not clear cutting, which I know has happened in the area, and it's sensitive, but we're not doing that. We have worked very, very hard with the VHB to only build this project on the farming land that was previously cleared 40 or 50 years ago. The rest of it shall remain undisturbed.
What is that acreage, do you happen to know, of the already cleared portion?
David?
The entire site overall.
Dave, come on up.
Come on up, Dave.
Not gonna be able to hear you.
Dave, I'll stand.
There's another chair right here.
John? Oh, okay. Thanks. Why don't you sit together? Yeah. If you insist. Like it,
15.1.
It's 44 acres in total, and the preserved amount will be.
I think a lot of this is probably covered in
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
presentation, so we should maybe just go through.
20 acres
So
is being
there's-
developed, right?
Right.
There's
That's
one-
right.
there's approximately 22 acres that is.
22 of the 44.
Yeah, that's preserved. That will be undisturbed.
And Michelle and David will take you through that in detail as soon as I shut up, which will be just about now. We are planning a sewage treatment plant. And I might say that where there's been some clear cutting for another project, if that organization were interested in tapping into what we build, we would certainly have no objection to that. We believe the right thing to do is to build this in a very environmentally sensitive way. And last but not least, what we will present to you is not carved in stone. It is a product of many meetings with the community, members I mentioned and Janice and her team to get it refined to a point that it's something to present today. We are very open to further dialogue on it, modifications to it. We really want to be a partner in this. So without any further ado, I'll turn it over to Michelle and David to walk you through the property itself.
Hi, my name is Michelle Vecino from Main Street. Thank you for the time this afternoon. I'm just going to take this down so you can look at it while I talk you through it a little bit because I think it will be easier. This is also in your packet. I believe it's on page 8 or 9 in the back of the packet. So the proposed site consists of 2 lots and it has a total of 44 acres. Currently, the existing zoning is split between CR 200 and CR 60. Northwell is proposing a split zone with multifamily and senior citizen housing. The multifamily will be approximately 15 acres, but of that 15 acres, we're preserving 9 acres. And the senior citizens housing will be approximately 29 acres, in which 13 of those acres are preserved. To be respectful of the environmental conditions of the site, the development will be concentrated within the area that's already cleared, which Andy has already discussed with you. Dave's going to talk a little bit about some of the existing environmental conditions.
Thank you. Again, my name is David Wortman. I'm the Senior Environmental Manager for VHB. The applicant team had retained VHB, among other things, to take a close look at the environmental conditions of the site and the area as part of its due diligence around this project. Those efforts included a review of historic records on the site itself, desktop review of published environmental maps and data, and as well multiple field visits out to the property to look and feel the conditions there. In the spirit of something that Mr. Mitchell just said, I want to just say, we fully recognize that if the applicant receives your permission to submit an application and begin that process, that there will be a comprehensive environmental review process as part of that, in order to sort of understand what are the potential environmental impacts of this development. But our client, the applicant, the design team endeavored to understand what are the environmental constraints, understand them early in the process, so that the project can be designed to be, considerate of those to minimize it or eliminate potential impacts from the get-go. In terms of the site's history, we've confirmed that the site has been used for agriculture and undeveloped lands for several decades. As Mr. Mitchell just mentioned, going back as far back as the record of historic aerial photographs show, the existing cleared area has been cleared, and in fact, additional portions were cleared and were allowed to revegetate. We've confirmed that the subject property is at the limits of the town's Aquifer Protection Overlay District and is within the
What does that mean, at the limits of?
It's like at the boundary.
Oh,
It's within.
it's not within it?
It's within. It's, at the extent, like the boundary in the area of our site. You have a graphic that I'll just point you to. If you see the slide that's titled Environmental Conditions, looks like this here.
In this packet?
I
Yep,
did know
correct.
that.
It's about halfway down, environmental conditions. And it's just a basic map that's meant to display, but relevant to your question, you can see the southern limit of that sort of cross-hatched area is Old Country Road. And so we're within the cross-hatched area, we're right at the border of the Aquifer Protection Overlay District. We're also within the Central Pine Barrens, which is shown here. We're within what they call the compatible growth area. Many of you may be familiar with that. Specifically, that compatible growth area is where development is redirected out of the core preservation area, which we're not within. And the design team's been really considerate about the goals for both of those, the APOD and the Pine Barrens. compatible growth area. And, broadly speaking, both of those things relate back to the protection of groundwater resources and natural habitat and creating contiguous areas of open space. And the design for the concept plan that's in front of you today, and it was submitted as part of this pre-application, I'll call it, is really respectful of those considerations. The clustered layout of the plan, where the development portion is concentrated within the existing cleared areas, allows the retention of substantial areas of open space. 21.58 acres of open space would be retained. All of the existing natural vegetation on the site will be retained.
May I ask
yes,
a question?
absolutely.
Sorry. Is this the only configuration that you've drawn up in terms of where you would put it in the already cleared area?
Michelle can speak
Yeah.
to that.
So we went through several iterations of
Okay.
what we could possibly do as a footprint. And like we said, starting, we're very fluid with how, we would like to work with you guys for how you envision it to look. There are some restrictions when it comes to how it can be designed, because we are looking to, right now, we're proposing 276 units. So there are 60 units that are proposed in the split zoning for multifamily, and the remainder is for senior housing.
Multifamily, non-age restricted.
Non-age restricted. So
Are they
I-
separated?
They are.
So if you go to page, it's not on this, but if you actually go to the page in your presentation,
Where had the splits?
yeah, where it has the split, it will show you where we're proposing the split zone, and that's how you get the calculation, like right here on the zoning and natural habitat. So it will show you how within the MS 44 zone, we are preserving some natural habitat and developing in some that's already clear. The same with the senior citizens housing, we're trying to achieve the same thing. Right?
Yeah, I meant like not in the same building, I mean like, is it in the
Separate
front
entrance.
or in the back?
So the MS 44 will be closer to Old Country Road, and the senior housing
Or in the back?
will be more towards the back.
So
Again,
that's what I kind of
all,
figured.
all of this is subject to discussion with
Yeah,
the town.
That's a good one, yeah.
I guess back to
Some
my
of the-
back to my question. One of the reasons why I asked about that is because I think one of the things that I've heard over and over again from all of our communities and hamlets throughout Southampton town, setbacks.
For sure.
And I'm just wondering, and I know you're trying to make sure that there's virtually no clearing, which I think is a very important goal, and I think it's great that you've already pretty much achieved that. But I'm wondering here, as folks are going down, is there a way to sort of achieve some sort of buffer while also ensuring that there's virtually no clearing?
Well, this is naturally going to happen clearly to the west, because you've got these huge swaths of
You're talking about here.
what appears to be.
So the west would be the bottom of that page.
Oh, okay.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, you've got that government-owned piece of property, and then you've got, as I said, the long.
So the answer is
I guess
yes.
I'm talking about
Yes,
along
you're
the
talking around Old Country Road.
because that's a high traffic road.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the answer would be yes. Some of the challenges right now is the fact that we have to stay like
In the cleared area.
within the two, 32 feet height. Like if we could maybe have a relationship or a working way that we know that we could seek a variance to maybe do 3 stories, we can minimize the amount of buildings that are on the site, which may not be an
I
option.
don't
So
think-
where
yeah.
we can also take away a building and, reposition it differently, which we can try. We can absolutely look to reduce the amount of buildings that are on the site if that's something that would move the needle for the project.
Well, I'm not even saying move, like reduce. I'm just saying, maybe there's a way to. Yeah. That's all. I just wanted to.
So the STP is in the back, and I think
Okay.
that's one of the challenges, right?
Okay.
So what you don't really see here is towards the back of the property, here, which this is.
Yep.
So this is our STP.
Okay.
So the STP has certain requirements where it has to
Sure.
have buffers to residential, which
Understood.
is limiting us being able to push this back even further, because I think there has to be either 100 or 200 foot buffer between a residence
Got
that
it.
you're putting here. So that's also a constraint that we have.
Also, if I may, if you feel
that you want them to go forward, we can require renderings.
Okay.
And like what we did in the case of Sandy Hollow, we oriented it like an L, so that half the site was
Mm-hmm.
preserved and it went back like in
Right.
an L shape.
Right.
Where those buildings were once up on the road.
Yeah.
And we reoriented it, so it like kind of disappeared.
Yeah.
So half the site was left.
Great point.
So we can work with that, and I would just also point out that the scale here looks like it's right up on the road, but I think when you zoom in, you would see that that's.
I mean, do
fair,
you
at
know
least
like
50
how
feet.
wide that buffer is?
Where's the road?
It's 50, it's a
It's
50 foot buffer.
feet. So the 50, it's a 50-foot requirement, and we're providing the 50 feet.
But I think if they move forward, we would wanna see renderings and get some public opinion on how it looks.
Yeah, I just,
and
if
that
people
kind of
reach out to us, I want to make sure that, we're, there is flexibility in terms of that particular
And I
concern.
would say, as you've heard, this is in a very conceptual
Yep.
state.
Yep.
Where if we have permission to go further with this.
Right.
We would work very collaboratively to address concerns and build this in listen, we want this to be a model community, we want it to look great.
Yep.
And that's, I think, what people don't understand. We had an issue with a change of zone in the past where we took it to the community to try to gauge their input before we even elected to consider it. And, they wanted to see the actual plans, and it's hard to explain to people, like, listen, and once you explain it, they understand. Listen, we're at a phase in this right now where until we say yes, we're going to even consider it, there's no point in the applicant putting in the money to do actual renderings and drawings and figure this all out, because if we're saying no, we're saying no. So you have to get to past that point, and then you can ask for more information, and I think that's what the public really needs to understand. Like, yes, we're all going to work together to get the best possible plan. We're conceptually thinking about numbers and change of zones and, does this fit in the community as a project, not so much as actual footprint and buildings and where everything is going.
Great point. And just one last really small point on this towards what the councilman raised is by the numbers, the plan before you is so far below the coverage limits for the respective zoning districts, which just really suggests that there's a lot of flexibility left in that plan to achieve
That's great.
the kinds of things you're talking
It's great to hear.
Yeah, I just was going to point out one or two last things in the vein of sort of environmental. Right, with regard to the APOD and Pine Barrens, of course you've heard now a few times, we're ensuring that the existing native vegetation is all preserved, which is a major goal. We'll also seek opportunities as the plan is developed further, some of which is shown on the concept here, to revegetate and provide additional buffers around the perimeters. We want the site to feel open and green and airy for the residents themselves, but also to provide those kinds of buffers like you're talking about. So there's a lot of opportunity for that. And you've heard now that we're talking about advanced waste treatment. So when it comes to groundwater resources, we don't have shallow groundwater conditions on this site, and we're not near any public supply well capture areas that the Suffolk Health Department and the local water authorities will be considerate of. And so we have favorable conditions. There are a few outstanding in the area, of course.
I did have a question about your cluster system, the way it's set up there next to the tree line. Is that going to be enough room with the structures that you currently are showing without clearing any
No, the
to the left?
Actual STP toward the.
Yeah, that one. Right.
Yes.
We don't have to,
Exactly.
we don't have to clear anything.
There's,
Yep.
right, because it's going to be leaching.
The system itself, as well as the leaching, all fits within the existing cleared area.
Okay.
Only the treatment of the leaching.
Yes. Correct.
Right.
Janice, why don't you tell us about the aquifer protection for those of us who aren't all that familiar with the restrictions that come with something that's in the aquifer protection overlay district?
In this case, the Aquifer Protection Overlay District is a protection area similar. Pine Barrens also has a clearing restriction. Ours is less strict than the Pine Barrens. They meet both.
And also, one strong point of the Aquifer Protection Overlay District regulations is that areas that have been historically cleared are credited. So that's another reason why we've been extremely pointed about keeping everything in a cleared area.
So that's all the Aquifer Protection Overlay District does, is restrict clearing to a certain extent,
Yes.
nothing to do with density housing, sewer treatment.
No, in this case, this site is designated as a TDR or a residential receiving area district. It's slated for increased density in our comp plan and in the Pine Barrens plan. So you'll see that in my report to you.
And-
That in order to, so the Pine Barrens, just a quick digression here, when the core areas were created, people were instead of it saying this is a constitutional taking, you're taking away my right to build in the core. The Pine Barrens Act said, no, we're not taking away your right, because for every credit, every certificate you get, there's gotta be 2 places where you can put it, 2 to 1 every time, so that we by law have to maintain these areas to receive them. So you'll see different areas in our zoning code called TDR receiving or residential area receiving districts. And those are areas that have already been contemplated to allow for increased density.
And that's the only way the plan, as a whole, the Pine Barrens plan as a whole, passed constitutional muster. It goes way back to a case involving Grand Central Station, where they said, we can stop you from taking it down, we're gonna allow you to transfer the development rights to other places in the city.
Right. In that case was air rights.
Air rights, thank you.
Yeah. But in here, it's, so you can't, constitutionally, if you own a piece of property, you have some reasonable expectation that you can do something with that property, and this is more Jim and John's realm than mine, but we deal with, Dave and I, he's our development rights manager, and that's this is all about, when we're constantly dealing with development rights and transferring TDRs. So
By the way, when I tried to explain TDRs to my father, he hadn't a clue what I was talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Never even envisioned in the original program.
it makes people whole in the end. In other words, if you invest in a piece of property, you want to build on it, and then the government says this isn't a good place for you to build on it, what do? You have to give them the ability to build elsewhere. And that's
It's
where
another
we set up those
preservation tool, and
areas.
it's actually no cost to the.
Exactly. Exactly.
And currently, the parcel's a nursery,
That is
an
correct.
active nursery.
We rented for years, we leased it to Warner Sumner Seed-Top Nursery. And I go down there a lot to talk to Warner and Ryan.
Okay.
But that's helpful, and the existing land use is helpful in terms of how the Aquifer Protection Overlay District looks at clearing and grandfathering and clearing.
I would just close my comment by saying this really is a critical project for Peconic Bay and Northwell. Much like all of the other service industries, we are finding it increasingly difficult to recruit the staff we need. And by having a component of this, and still be open to the community, a component of this for our staff for affordable housing will be a absolutely key piece of ensuring that we can continue to provide services and grow. And then the other piece is, I'll just start where I finish where I started, which is, to us, this is a healthcare project that has a residential component to it. We are completely open to dialogue and discussion. We're not a typical developer. As a matter of fact, I don't know a lot about development. Our expertise is in healthcare. But we think that this would be a great project, to be a model project for others to see. And between the innovation of Northwell and the forward thinking of the town, I hope we can get to first base on this.
Mr. Go ahead, please.
No, I just had a question about, because it says it's 2-story unit buildings. Are they 2-story units, or are they units on the ground floor and units on the second floor?
Because of the mobility issue, we are looking at probably, it will look like a traditional garden complex, but we believe we have to put elevator systems in for mobility.
I asked that question because we have a 55 and over community in my hamlet of East Quogue, and it was units on the lower level, units on the upper level, and the upper units are walk-ups, and just not even from a mobility standards from the seniors that are now aging in place in those units.
Correct.
We also have issues with our EMS. They can't
Yeah,
even
get
get a
the
stretcher up
stretcher
there
up
and
there.
get people out. They have to put them in a
Understand.
chair.
Get it
It's a
completely.
nightmare.
So I'll just comment that when you look at all the 55 and olders that were built in this town, especially in Riverhead, there was never a contemplation of what to do when the people hit 65 and 70, and they're all at that point now. And they don't have the mobility and they don't have the services to stay where they've been living for 20 years. We hope to fix that.
It's putting in elevators from the start.
Yep.
I just have a couple of things. Thank you very much for a very elaborate presentation, and Janice, thank you for the report too. So I wanted to ask you about the workforce housing component. What are we estimating that to be in
60
comparison to the?
So 60 units for workforce housing.
Okay.
Right now, based upon the proposed concept that's put in front of you, and
Right.
then the senior housing would be about 217 units.
Okay.
The way it exists today.
Right.
So if we were to revisit the plan, if we wanted to put more of a buffer and perhaps move a building or something, then those numbers would proportionately change.
Of course.
Do you have a sense of the bedroom mix, or were you about to ask that? I'm sorry.
No. That's a good follow-up.
1 and 2 bedroom, a lot more 1 bedroom.
Okay.
But there will be some 2 bedrooms.
Okay. And my next question, it's not really a question, it's more of I think just a statement and a recommendation. Obviously, this also will have impacts to Brookhaven Town too. Even though this is on the Southampton side, I want to make sure we're including our Brookhaven partners in this conversation. We started a joint committee for the advancement of Eastport with the town of Brookhaven, but because this has a lot to do with just the population of the area and impacts to the school districts, I want to just make sure that we're also including them in the conversation lockstep.
Absolutely, I look forward to meeting with you to facilitate that, sir.
Sure.
And I will say that we've enjoyed a good relationship with Brookhaven. For example, when we built the Gertrude Lewis File Campus, which is a pretty extensive ambulatory campus at 111, which we leveraged in this. We had a lot of discussion on how to do that one correctly also to meet the community needs.
And then just one more follow-up question for Janice on the 2-story issue with the elevators. Our code, I believe, requires you to have outside entrances to each unit. So how would that work with?
So we did submit.
I'm sure you already brought this up.
So we did submit something with our application.
Which is the rendering?
Which was a rendering that was done by an architect. I blew it up just so you can see it. So because you guys do have that specified code, there is an entrance to each one of the units, but from the outside, even though it's hidden, you can't see it. So aesthetically, it looks more pleasing, and you're not just seeing a whole bunch of doors. Because in order to achieve the number of units in each one of these buildings, it would be a lot of doors. So I think the idea is that in one of these, there'll be the elevator that will take them up to the 2nd floor. That's how they're gonna get up. So their entrance will actually be probably an elevator going up to their unit as opposed to having to walk upstairs, right? So the single person will walk into their unit on the ground, and then the person that's getting up to the 2nd floor, instead of a walk up, it will be an elevator that's gonna take
So
them.
technically, there could be an elevator in
It would
each
probably be 4 because
in
if
each
they-
building.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yes. Yes.
It's quite a bit of cost.
It is, but there's a difference of cost when you're using an elevator that's made for 1 or 2 people
Okay.
versus a commercial elevator that's gonna hold, you think in a hospital.
Yeah.
So, and it would have to be big enough to,
So
stretchers and things of that nature that they'll have to work through. But they're willing to do that, for the benefit of the community.
So one elevator would take care of how many apartments?
So I think that still needs to be, vetted, depending on the dimensions. And so we can, as we continue to work on the plan, we can give you that information. I wouldn't want to tell you something concrete right now.
Okay, out of curiosity.
So each year, the average age of the town of Southampton goes up. And we've been seeing that, and that is not going to change. With the numbers that I'm seeing here, do you have a projected amount of employees that will be associated with this facility? How many jobs is it going to produce?
So it will produce some jobs. I don't have the concrete numbers to share with you today.
And that's probably not set yet because
No,
we're in
and
this process.
We anticipate it's going to preserve a large number of jobs because, as I said, people are finding it impossible to, even on the North Fork is becoming a huge issue as well. So there is no affordable housing for any of the staff Most people are starting now to have to travel from the west. And when they look at that expense of commuting, there are options at other hospitals. So it's
And stress of commuting.
and the stress of commute and the
Not
traffic
easy.
jams.
Because when I'm in the hospital, I always ask the nurses and the people where they live.
Yep.
And not too many people live in Southampton, and I'm a repeat customer in Southampton.
It's very difficult.
I think
So
to
this-
the councilman's point, I was gonna say, certainly with respect to the construction phase, this would represent a substantial investment, which translates to lots of job creation during the construction phase. And then during the operational phase, we would call it, there will also be jobs created. This isn't, I guess, a traditional multifamily use, but even with those, between maintenance and so on, there are still permanent jobs that are created.
And operating
here with
the
medical.
operating the medical services on the
Yeah,
community.
because you have to have people there.
Yes, we
And
will.
probably provide meals during the course of the day.
Meals, nurses to do, first line
Medicine.
triage and diagnostics. Yep.
This is the Eastport South Manor School District. Do you anticipate any children in some of the affordable units? And I'll also qualify that by saying that Eastport South Manor has seen a decline in enrollment
I
in
was
the
gonna
past
say.
number of years.
So the answer is yes, we do
Uh-huh.
anticipate, so quite a few of our medical residents, those are what we call GME, graduate medical education, family medicine residents, surgical residents, do have families, so there will be some kids. What we've looked at, and we have not taken this out to Eastport South Manor because we wanted to get your feedback first,
Mhm.
but there's been a pretty substantial decline in enrollment, as you said, in many of these districts. So given that a significant portion of this is going to be senior and a smaller portion will be multifamily, we do not anticipate that this is going to be a negative impact. In fact, it may be a positive impact to stabilize some of the enrollment.
You know, I think that organizations should be able to build housing for their own staff because it's so critically needed. But it's my understanding that you cannot, have a preference
That is
for
correct.
that. So how do you know that any of these 60 units will be available to your nurses and staff and employees? I mean, it sounds like you're counting on that, and I'm just, maybe there's something that the attorneys can speak to.
Yeah, I can examine that. Certainly, the town is building affordable housing, or affordable housing is going to be a lottery, there can't be a preference.
Right.
But are you using state funding or?
Not yet.
No,
Not
So
yet.
if you're not,
why not?
Is
Not yet.
that impactful on
The
whether
preference
it's
issue?
state funding or not?
Yeah,
still call fair
They
housing.
can't have
I mean,
their
it's-
own housing and then the preference for, the community
Yeah,
number.
it could be.
I mean, what we might have to
look into
do,
that. If it's
again, this
interesting.
is, we're very preliminary. We might have to, the hospital may have to keep one of the buildings, own it, and then, lease it out on a subsidized
It would
basis.
almost be like a dormitory type of situation.
No,
I mean, not
Not at
pure
all.
dormitory situation, but
No.
I'm saying that. if-
No, that's not the intent.
It could be something around the idea, you might be able to get around the idea of
Housing
the
available
preference
for
if it's for your own employees.
Yep.
Okay, we can look at that.
Something that we do
Employee
for-
housing, excuse me, just a point, employee housing is one of the goals of the hospital initiative that's planned to be at Stony Brook, Southampton.
Correct.
We've talked about housing on that campus, and I know the hospital is considering and planning on
Correct.
their employees to be in those living areas
But does
in
that
some way,
mean
shape,
the
or form.
employee- The
And of
hospital
course,
would have to
Preference
own
for central
the
workers?
housing, right? In
Well-
order to,
No, the
the
hospital-
hospital would have to own it in
The
order
hospital would
to
own
be
it
able
and then
to
lease it out.
right.
say who
So they
can
have a
live
set
there.
aside for workers and then they have a
Yep.
general lottery section for the community.
So North Shore
I
University.
don't think so.
So
Mhm.
North Shore University Hospital might be a good example. The hospital owns some of the affordable housing right around the hospital, and then we lease it out to our staff. The rest of the community is in typically a lottery basis for the housing.
I mean, there's gotta be ways to work it out.
And likely your staff is diverse enough probably to even
Definitely.
avoid any kind of fair
Definitely.
housing action anyway. Yeah. So That's another way of getting around it.
Part of the model, and again, I'll have to work through all the details, but part of the model of this is multi-generational and senior together, having healthcare providers live there and provide services to the at-risk senior population. There is a program that we run in Northwell, it's run in all of our family medicine residency programs, it's called house calls. Our doctors in this community would be providing the house calls directly to the departments.
This is almost like a community benefit situation in and of itself. Is it like almost
That's
like
the
it would be
intent.
could be its own kind of zoning, somewhat?
But we'd have to fit it into.
Yeah, I know,
so
but
essentially, yes. It's a
You can
perfect
create
synergy.
parameters
it's like
around
a
it.
P.
medical housing.
It is, if we can,
It's supportive senior housing. with
Yeah,
medical
I mean, to
services.
me, the whole kit and caboodle is pretty much community benefit.
Yeah.
So it's
I just, if I may, I'm just trying to struggle, how to talk about statistics and everything about what is this benefit in terms of the need for housing that local people and people moving into the community can afford. And please forgive me, because, statistics, they say, and we can show you anything, but I'm struggling with this presentation last night, and I grew up about 600 yards from here. And I live on the street that I grew up on. I don't live in the house that I grew up on, I live on the street. And when I walk down to the end of my street in February, on a February night, to walk the dog, there's nobody on my street, because it's all second home. When I moved back home in '86, I was so thrilled I was able for $186,000 to buy a beat-up old farmhouse just in the village of Southampton, which is very dear to me from a generational point of view. $186,000 it was. And so what I did two things. And I've been lucky. I've been very, very lucky. I really have been. So I bought this house, the mortgage that would show, of course, for me when I was in my 29 years old for $186,000. $186,000 now is worth, from 1986, is worth $522,000. That house, I sold it 28 years ago. That house sold in May. I fixed it up a little bit, for $2.9 million. So, for me, and I've been involved when I was the town attorney. We pushed the Bridge Routes subdivision off the Sag Harbor Turnpike to have some voluntary affordable. As a member of the Southampton Business Alliance, we provided some affordable. I'm very proud to have worked on the CREOG affordable housing, which you guys helped us with greatly. But it's been one of those government interventions that I, as someone who doesn't like government interventions, has been very supportive of, because in effect, by the way that the government has zoned the areas out here, you sort of put your thumb on what's available. Because as nice as 5-acre and 3-acre zoning is, it also really, really, really affects what's available. And so from my own experience, I started thinking about what my own experience is and what the value of what has happened to the value of houses, and to make one of these homes for one of my 5 kids just literally a daydream. I've been very fortunate. I'm hoping they'll be as well. Maybe they'll be able to afford something, but so there's a real dire need for this. And I'm telling you something that you all know.
Yeah.
I know that. I'm not informing you of something that you don't know. But I thought about it, and I thought about how, to heck with statistics, I thought about how it relates to me personally, and how my own experience in terms of the change in values. I mean, I thought I was the luckiest guy in the world. I don't know, I have to get a house in Southampton, $186,000. That thing is worth $2.9 million. I mean, years and years later, I sold it 30 years ago, but it really brought home the fact that it's just it's a daydream for so many people. So anything we can do.
I just want to say one other thing. So the elephant in the room, there will be the mobile home park down the road.
Excuse me, Andy, could you repeat that?
The elephant in the room may be the fact that there's a mobile home park down the road.
They're scheduled, I think they're slated to go before the planning board.
I
Today.
will tell you that this is not going to be something like that.
That's two different things in my book.
Yeah.
I know it's more development in that area, but this is what we own. We're a healthcare provider that wants to provide supportive housing and affordable housing.
Well, we appreciate that you're coming to us, and we appreciate your willingness to work with the community. So that's.
And I don't think any of us will penalize you for what another property owner is doing down the road.
The idea that you want to tie into the
It's
SDP.
obviously going to be
That to
a
be
range
helpful.
of different income levels, right? Because we want to know that from the outset. I've been talking to our housing director about just having the knowledge of, we don't want it all to fall into one category or another, because the strongest are in a nice,
Sure.
And
diversified range.
she is watching this. That's Kara Bach, our Director of Housing, and she would offer, if we do move forward with that, the Community Housing Fund and our Housing Department would want to be a part of this in
Absolutely.
some way, shape, or form. But
We hope to be able to get the first phase,
Mhm.
and then we look to really be participative, there we go, and collaborative. We want to do the right thing.
I think it's a great need for the community.
Thank you. I may be the first one in there. John and I are gonna have to,
Fight for it.
duke it out.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nice to see everyone.
Yes,
Thank
look
you.
forward
Yeah,
to the
so
next
the
step.
next step is that I'll finalize this report,
You want
and
this?
then you will have a resolution. You'll mull it over and decide what you want to do. And then if you like to consider it, then they're able to make an actual formal application, and we'll have more details at that point.
And we're also very aware of the fact that it ain't over till it's over. So, this is something that's gonna have to be dialogue throughout the entire process. And we're gonna have to, we're gonna have to satisfy you. It makes good sense that it is indeed truly a community benefit.
Yeah.
What's the current, when it says CR 60 and CR 200, what are those, like, how many per acre? Like, what is that?
CR 200 is 5 acre zone, and CR 60 is not two, one and a half. Again, they are also receiving area, which lowers the actual density. I mean, increases the density, lowers the CR 200 to down to.
Is that in the
About half.
comprehensive plan, or
Yeah.
where is that? It's in the comp plan?
To that point, then you mentioned that there'll be some more information and detail with the application submission if we're committed to proceed. Something that we've done on projects where there's, a lot of important information to share is we can supplement, one of those application requirements would be a part 1 environmental assessment form, which covers a broad range of topics and some of the same things that we've just talked about today. And we could include, if it would, interest the board, some analysis of what are all the comprehensive plan recommendations, how does this align with the town's housing goals that have been established,
I'll give you some of that up
and
front.
give some of that detail.
And also, just, we didn't discuss it, but there is a piece of county, it's designated, we're not sure if it's parkland or scrub property. It says scrub property in our GIS, but if there was a way to connect this property straight to 111, we would advocate to do that, because then you're not going on,
Right.
You can enter into your home at Old Country Road, but if, say they had a shuttle bus that
Could just go.
should right down
Good point.
111,
Exactly.
that would be amazing.
It's-
And,
it's-
right to their other facility, so there's some synergy there that we would.
Because
like to
there has
explore.
been traffic concerns on that road too.
Sure,
So
so the more, if we could get an established roadway there,
Yeah.
that would
Hmm.
really alleviate it.
You also, you just wouldn't want to have, other other from outside of the community going through that community to get to 111.
No.
Private road.
No,
would be a
private road.
private
Yeah.
road with
Or
gate
somehow, we
controlled,
would
et cetera.
have to figure out with the
Yeah.
county what
We
that
have
would
to work with the
entail.
county
Yeah.
and see if that's possible.
Yeah, we have to sit down with
I would
DPW.
also say. that
How they own it in the first place.
Because it would
Is
absolutely
preserved
become a
property?
thoroughfare.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
I've been
another
in some
sensitive
discussions
piece I
about
should
this, but
bring
that's
up,
other county.
and that
There,
is
there,
that
there were some.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
started
Going back to
this
Steve
process
Jones'
with,
days.
Bob Nelson and Pope. I recognized early on that was not going to be something that we wanted to continue. So VHB has been on this project for 90% of it will continue to advise us. If there's anything that you see from Nelson and Pope in any of the files, that was very early on before we dismissed them.
The only thing that will actually be submitted from Nelson Pope would be the survey that they completed. That's the only thing, so the survey was done.
But they're not on the project.
Not at all.
Yeah, that's good to
That was a
make a
difficult
public record.
conversation, but an important one. We want to be credible to all of the community.
Yes.
And our elected officials.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Nice meeting you.
Thank you.
John,
Thank you.
how's it going?
Thanks, Mr. Mitchell.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank
Yep.
you.
Nice to meet you. Take care.
Oh, yeah.
You too, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
That was a lot of money in 1986. 185.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
But it wasn't like
Yes.
what we've seen today.
Of course.
Not the
John, it's always been a pleasure.
Trying to remember what I did.
Not the one from the book.
Yes.
Oh, we're still meeting.
Sure, yeah. Sure.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, John.
Try to look at my calendar, see what I did this week.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Good. Yep, we're good. It's just a delay.
Yeah. Thank you. You give it, John? Yeah. Yeah. He is a good guy. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Okay.
I'm gonna try to see what I did this week.
Senate, sir? Your son's beating you up for selling that house.
What?
Your son's beating you up for selling that house.
No, the only reason I was able to afford that house was I sold my co-op in New York that I was mortgaged up to here. And I never forget my dad saying, geez, too bad you can't hold on to this. I'm like, yeah, well, then I couldn't buy the house. So,
Yeah, I know. It's crazy when you think about it. Life's good.
be well, everyone.
You
Bye-bye.
too, John, thank you. Well, we could get started with our liaison legislative updates. Anybody has anything they'd like to report?
Yeah, I'd like to bring just an issue to the board so you are all aware. I went to the Gabrisky Citizens Advisory Committee a couple of weeks ago and been receiving complaints about helicopter traffic. And just for the board's edification, the Eastern Regional Helicopter Council a couple of years ago created a route that went along the southern route, which is along the beach, turning up at Hampton Bays to Robbins Island and coming in through North Sea, Noyak, and Sag Harbor. They've essentially redlined an area from North Sea into East Hampton Airport, and that is really ramped up, and we're getting complaints. But just so you all know that exists, it doesn't necessarily, well, it affects western parts of the town in that helicopters are flying over the western part of town to get to East Hampton Airport. It's significant. Unfortunately or fortunately, whatever side you're on this, the town of East Hampton has lost their lawsuits and they are unable to control their own airport. So this exists, and we're hearing about it. We get more flights from East Hampton Airport than any town on the east end of Long Island. So just to let you know, we're hearing from folks, and when we see the town officials in East Hampton, perhaps we can talk to them, but yet they do not necessarily control that airspace because helicopters can fly where they want to. And those routes were set by the private helicopter industry group. That's it for me for now.
Okay, I hadn't heard that. Thanks for the update.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to follow the Bel Air saga, the contracts are to be signed by the supervisor. When she signs them, sometime today, they'll be sent back to the contractors.
John just told me he signed it yesterday and it
signed it
went back
yesterday.
to the comptroller.
Yeah, it's different what they told me. So it went back to the contractors. So once we get a date, we'll let people know. We'll be down there with our sledgehammers.
Oh, well, I don't know about that. What about the asbestos?
We stay away a little bit.
When I got into this seat, there were about 60 people living in squalor in that building.
Yep. Scaring the heck out of us and
So
John
good.
Rankin and
So
everybody
John
else.
had it, he signed it, now it's back
Mhm.
with
Yeah.
Dorothy. So it should be ready to go. We'll make sure we find out the date. I know you're on that.
Yes.
Okay.
Because Mike wants to know.
We all do. Everybody
And the
in
West
days
Hampton
wants to know.
contract, it just went back to have something fixed in it for the senior rec center. They'll have that back to sign in a week or two.
Good, good. And we could get started working with the architect. And I started working on the budget. Had my first meeting with Dorothy, and more to come on that.
Great.
All the department heads put in their wish lists, so filtering through that.
Did you get ours yet?
Yours? What are you looking for? Yeah. Michael?
So we have the Traffic Mitigation Task Force meeting coming up on July 31st at 2:00 p.m. Councilman Scavone will be there to also update the group about the NOYAC grant project, so thank you for that. We'll also have some presentations from Tom Neely on some of the data he's collected, additional discussions as well. We're hoping to also have engineer Mr. Hillman there to see if he can provide us with an update on the County Road 39 study. Maybe there's some information that can be relayed over to the task force, which will be really important. We've been doing everything that we can. The Greenfield Road. We've been speaking with the county executive's office on that. They're looking at something to help us out with that. I know that also Mr. Pell has been working with the highway department to also see what we can do. I've had a conversation with the chief of police as well in terms of maybe stationing an officer over there. I know that he said that he was going to try and make that happen, just maybe a couple hours a week.
That would be helpful.
Yeah, we'll have to see how they're able to work that out logistically, but I'm appreciative of everybody's collective efforts on that.
And did you hear that there's an application in front of the planning board for a property right across the street?
We did hear
maybe
that.
There's something that could happen there that could help with the traffic
Revise at least the
mitigation.
entryway of Greenfield somehow. Yeah, so we're really working diligently on that. I also want to mention too, I've been working with the Bridgehampton Civic Association. Pamela Harwood has come to meet with me and CPF Director Jackie Fenlon to talk about a tree policy, and maybe we can sort of share throughout our departments an arborist to identify certain trees that are in need of either rehabilitation, or identify trees that in certain areas that are historic districts. So we're going to be looking at that. And what else? Let's see. I think I've covered everything
Well, thank you.
for now. Yeah.
Thank you.
I don't have
Cindy?
anything at this time.
Not right now. Okay. All right. Well, then I move to close the meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks,
We're going
everyone.
in exec
Oh,
session.
no, I
We
didn't
just closed the meeting.
All right. Backtrack.
Reopen the meeting.
I move to close the meetings to go in. Move to go into executive session for personnel, contracts, and acquisitions, and then close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.